William Wordsworth was a well-known English poet heavily involved in the English Romantic works. In a joint effort with Samuel Taylor Coleridge, William published the Lyrical Ballads in 1798. William Wordsworth is most widely recognized for bringing off the Romantic era in English literature. He was born in the Lake District, famed for its magnificent lakes, mountains, and woods in northwest England. And thus, he had profound affection and regard for nature when he was a child. His love of nature had a massive effect on his attitude and work. Let's know more aspects of his life and literary works. William Wordsworth was born in Cockermouth, Cumbria, on April 7, 1770. His father worked as an attorney. Wordsworth's parents both passed before he turned 15. Leaving him and his 4 other siblings in the supervision of various relatives. Wordsworth had a love of nature as a young man, which is expressed in much of his poetry. While studying at Cambridge University, Wordsworth spent his summer vacation on a walking tour of Switzerland and France. He became a supporter of the French Revolution's beliefs. He began writing poetry while still in school, but none of his works was printed until 1793. Young William discovered his passion for poetry while attending Hawkshead Grammar School. In 1787, he began his career as a poet with the publishing of a sonnet in the European magazine. He visited Europe while studying at St. John's College in Cambridge. This experience profoundly shaped his life interests and empathy, exposed him to the struggles of an average man, and inspired his poems. In 1793, he released An Evening Walk and Descriptive Sketch, a poetry collection that boosted his career. In 1795, he met author Samuel Taylor Coleridge. Soon after meeting him, the most important work of the English Romantic movement, Lyrical Ballads, was published in 1798 due to their teamwork. In 1807, at the peak of his career, he wrote Poems in 2 volumes. In 1810, he released Guide to Lakes, then The Excursion, in 1814, and Laodamia, in 1815.
William Wordsworth was one of the earliest English Romantic poets, and his collaboration with Samuel Taylor Coleridge to release Lyrical Ballads set off a trend of Romanticism in English literature. It would be best to read the following William Wordsworth's most renowned poems. Composed upon Westminster Bridge, the poem was published in 1802 to reflect the glory of England in the early morning sunlight. The writer appreciates the early morning peacefulness of his surroundings while resting on the Westminster Bridge, which industrial operations would later ruin during the day. Lyrical Ballad, Coleridge collaborated in its publication. It contains 23 poems, 19 of which were written by Wordsworth. The first lyric published in this collection was Lines Written a Few Miles Above the Tintern Abbey. Wordsworth explains his poetic concepts in the preface to the second edition. Wordsworth stated that his primary purpose in terms of subject matter was to select events and situations from everyday reality, and language understood by men. The Prelude, it was composed between the years 1799 and 1805. It is a 14-book descriptive epic poem written in blank verse. The poet's emotional growth is evaluated in this poem. This poem might be seen as a chronicle of the poet's mental evolution. The Excursion. This poem was written and published in blank verse and is divided into 9 books. It was first printed in 1814. The poem is part of a larger philosophical poem titled On Man, On Nature, and On Human Life, which was written in 3 sections by the author, but only this one was completed. Michael, It's beautiful poetry on the sadness of an elderly shepherd's shattered dreams. It's written in a straightforward, uncomplicated tone full of sadness and truthfulness. Lucy poem. In Germany, Wordsworth authored 5 short poems. It accomplishes unique compassion and elegant clarity of expression for Wordsworth. However, Lucy's details of origin and identity remain. Sonnets. About 500 sonnets were written by Wordsworth. He is regarded as one of English literature's best sonneteers. Some of his greatest works are the sonnet, Milton, The World is Too Much with Us on Westminster Bridge, and Late and Soon. Tintern Abbey. Tintern Abbey was published in 1798. The poem is based on a little location near the Monmouthshire settlement of Tintern, on the Welsh side of the River Wye. Wordsworth explains his beliefs about nature and its beauty to his readers through this poem. It's conversational poetry with components of an ode and a theatrical presentation. Ode. Intimations of Immortality. The poem discusses the author's heavenly connection to nature and is regarded as Wordsworth's best ode. The poem contrasts a kid's strong relationship with the environment to that which is lost when the child gets older and loses his heavenly perspective. The narrator's memories of the past, on the other hand, permit him to experience his connection with nature. The Solitary Reaper. Solitary Reaper, released in 1807, is a lovely poem about a little girl harvesting on the farms whose singing grabs the author's heart. He's so taken aback by the song's tone, emotion, and lyrical structure that he invites passers-by to hold their horses and listen to the reapers singing. Daffodils. Daffodils, one of the masterpieces of English Romantic literature, describes the story of a poet walking around the countryside and encountering a field of lovely flowers. Wordsworth's experience with a large group of daffodils while walking with his sister Dorothy in April 1802 influenced the poem published in 1807. Ode to Duty. Ode to Duty, one of Wordsworth's odes, is about the poet's approach and understanding of the concept of responsibility. As much as he respects love and joy, he believes that the essence of responsibility has greater elegance and meaning. He believes that, while harsh, may also be charming and stunningly gorgeous when carried out with a bigger purpose. London 1802, the poem, written in 1802 itself, is a driver for Wordsworth criticizing his fellow citizens for being greedy and ethically sluggish. He praises 17th-century writer John Milton and discusses how Milton might improve England's current position if he were still alive. Wordsworth's poem, London 1802, while paying respect to Milton, cast light on the decaying realities of English society. Few other facts about William Wordsworth. He witnessed the American and French revolutions develop during his infancy and early adulthood. These events undoubtedly had an impact on his thinking. He had a close relationship with his siblings and family. His mother passed away when he was 8 years old, and his father died too soon afterward, leaving the children orphaned. The siblings were split up and sent to close relatives. In 1802, he married Hutchinson, a lifelong old friend. They were married for a long time and enjoyed a good life united. They welcomed 5 kids, 2 of whom died at an early age. An English poet, Samuel Coleridge, became a colleague of Wordsworth. They collaborated to form a collection of poetry. Wordsworth was a great admirer of nature. He used to go for walks late at night. He would frequently go on short walks, following which he would compose poetry thoughts on pieces of paper. Due to his strange behavior, many in his neighborhood suspected he was a spy for the French government. Why we should read the work of Wordsworth. Romanticism was a European artistic, cultural, lyrical, and philosophical movement that began at the end of the 18th century. Romanticism was defined by its stress on feeling and independence. It can also be defined as the celebration of all things historical and contemporary, with a preference for the medieval over the classical. Wordsworth is regarded as one of Romanticism's most influential thinkers and characters. He is recognized as a poet interested in spiritual and cognitive exploration, fascinated with the individual connection to the environment, and a strong proponent of integrating common people's terminology and voice inflections in poetry. Here are some significant reasons to read William Wordsworth. 1. For the love of nature. Wordsworth will help you find love for nature and boost your commitment to defend it in today's world when the economic climate is deteriorating every day. Wordsworth's strong affection for nature's beautiful shapes was evident from an early age. The Wordsworth children lived in vintage paradise along the Derwent River, which ran past the terraced garden below the large home. Several of Wordsworth's writings are about the natural world's majesty and magnificence, reflecting this strong relationship with nature. I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud, composed upon Westminster Bridge, Tintern Abbey, and other works immerse the reader in a surreal interaction with nature. 2. For the love of beautiful quotes, Wordsworth, a romantic poet, wrote many great works that captivated people's emotions. He wrote several fantastic sentences that were later turned into quotations. The following are some of his quotations. What we need is the desire to learn, not the resolve to believe. In modern business, it is the honest man who doesn't know what he's doing who should be dreaded the most. Death and Legacy. William Wordsworth died of pleurisy on April 23, 1850, at his residence at Rydal Mount, Westmoreland, England. He was buried in Grasmere Street, Oswald's Church. His wife, Mary, released the prelude, also known as Poem to Coleridge, a few months after death. He was the first and only poet laureate to compose no official verses, which he did in 1843.